we are live.
What's up? What's up? Episode 2, Natural Nonsense. We got Kyler, Nathan.
Building.
We got Andre 1K in this thing. What's up? What's up? We here. We here. Let's get it. Let's get into it, man. Let's just get it off the top, bro. Like, so let's start off with an animal would you rather. Right. So we was kind of talking a little bit last time in the planning of this, and it kind of came up like people really don't know about these animals, but would you rather fight a bear on land or a tuna in water?
Whew. And when you first asked this question, I was like, a bear, obviously. I mean, a tuna, obviously. Like, I'm not dealing with a bear. Then I looked up like how big a tuna like can get up to. Like, if you Google how big is a tuna, the answer you're gonna get is 500 to 550 pounds. So it's definitely like it's at least more of a thought than just like, oh, by far, because then you got to factor in being in the water.
You're in the water with the tuna.
I don't have no gills. But to keep it a buck with you, I'm fucking that tuna up.
So I'll give you this. I'll give you the scuba tank, right? I'll give you like you'll have at least an hour's worth of air. Just because if you're not lasting an hour with a bear, you're not gonna have an hour of air with a bear anyway. But just for the sake of that, you know, what is your plan to like of attack on the tuna though? Because I think that's the thing. Because I personally would rather fight the bear, but by fight I mean try to live,
get mauled by.
Yeah, like try to, you know, like how they play dead. That's what I mean by fight the bear. I mean playing dead. I don't mean actually fighting the bear.
I'm not fighting no bear. I think I'll figure the tuna thing out. Like, I wasn't even thinking about the scuba tank. I was just about to be raw dogging it out there. I saw myself in the water, just going for the gills, coming up for air, going back down, going for the gills. Because we talking about one tuna, right?
One tuna.
I'm gonna just punch the hell out of that tuna gills. I'm not even gonna cap.
Hey, you know, that's a good strategy. I think when I'm underwater, at least when I'm like really underwater, I feel so discombobulated because like Andre, personally, I can't do the like wading in the water thing where you can stay in one place. I don't know, somewhere in the not being taught how to swim, I can physically swim. Like if I'm in the water and I gotta swim from one end to the other, I can do it. But if it's about like just that kind of like staying in one spot thing, I'm like, how would I even stay in one spot to swing? Because you don't have no leverage. Like, I think that's where with the tuna, I'm like, I don't even know. I feel like I'll just be done for because I wouldn't even have no options.
See, that makes a whole lot of sense because I've been swimming since I was like young, so I can wade in the water. I can do all that. Like, I can hold my breath, like, and still have both hands free. So I felt ready. I'm like,
so you got more of an Aquaman vibe.
Yeah, like I was just gonna go for it. Like, I'm like, I've been in the water before. Granted, I've never fought an animal in the water or fought anything in the water. But going back to the bear, like, I don't even care what kind of bear we talking about, really.
Because honestly, like if it was a black bear, but it wasn't a mom, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm more scared of the mom bears. Mm-hmm. Mom bears, they the most like, there ain't no, because you know how they had that bear spray and they got that like, you know, hey bear, you know, like hey bear, make yourself look big. Bro, if a mama bear is with her cubs, you're done. The fact that you saw the mama bear, you're done. So But if it's a black bears are a little more, docile than brown bears and polar bears. Polar bears aren't, to me, I don't even put them in the same category. They're dinosaur creatures. Like, I don't think people
Oh
really realize how much different a polar bear is from a regular like bear you might see in some woods. Like, it's
no,
not. Well, I don't. I'm
no,
not. I clearly put a bear, but we not.
nah. I knew it wasn't a polar bear because there's no like, you know how they get up on their hind legs. Like, no,
And bruh can just two piece me, and my head comes off like in one
no.
swipe. Like I saw, because one of the things, like, because I've seen, I know it was in San Diego and it's kind of weird, but I've always thought about how weird it is.
It's so weird that we have polar bears in San Diego. Every time I go to the San Diego Zoo, I'm like, dang, that's a polar bear. But I'm like, wait, how come it ain't no ice in this motherfucker?
It's real warm for me right now. Like I'm sweating. I
I'm
know,
over
bruh.
here like, ooh, I need some water. And it's a polar bear right there. It's 80 degrees.
Bruh gotta be hot, and they put it under the guise of conservation and rescue and all that. But we couldn't have rescued bruh to Alaska somewhere. I mean, like I don't know. Anyway, their paws, like bruh, paw was my whole torso, my
Nah.
entire torso. But yeah, man, I think it is it's something to think about because that in water, because you got to have that confidence in water, and I don't got it. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's that leeway.
Yeah, that's definitely the leeway. But the moment you said fight a bear on land, I was like, nah, I'm cool. Like you mentioned, like the mama bear, the black bear. I don't give a damn what kind of. I'm not trying to fight no bear on land. The bear can have
Yogi Bear don't matter, huh?
it. Yogi Bear, Smokey the Bear, like Winnie the Pooh. Hell, that'll probably be the only bear I can take in a fight.
Man, nah, you seen that Winnie the Pooh horror movie? Bruh, nah, I mean we got 30 seconds. Can we just process if for all the listeners, go look at the trailer. That's all I'm gonna say. Actually, just look at the picture stills from the trailer. That's all I'm gonna ask you to do. But they are making a horror film based from Winnie the Pooh. And I thought this was complete nonsense. And this is what this podcast is for, you know what I'm saying? But no, they actually are doing it. I Hey, I don't know about that Winnie the Pooh, but the regular Winnie the Pooh that's with Piglet and all that, yeah, you that might be the only bear I could, koala bear, but I don't know if they count as bears.
You can't fight no koala bear, bro. I can't. That would be terrible for your PR. You just getting in a fight
Hey,
with a
I
koala
just
bear.
uppercut. There's a picture too. It ain't even like somebody just said, or like I saw Andre punch it. There's a picture of me just giving a koala bear an uppercut. Like I'm done, bro. That's it for me. That's
You're
it for
done.
me.
I'll be looking for a new podcast
I could
co-host, all that.
I could punch probably an actual person and it'd be fine. Like it'd be cool. Oh well, maybe they had a reason for it. A koala bear? Nah. I'm done.
Because what
I'm
you
done.
punching a koala bear for, it's not moving fast enough to need to get punched.
Let alone like, and they're so little. Like when I saw a koala bear in real life, I was like, I don't know why I thought they were bigger than this, but they kind of little.
That's going to be a future podcast segment. Animals that's not the size that you thought they were. Because I saw a platypus at this safari park the other day. And I'm like, yeah, we're gonna have to have that be a segment. The other thing is, I actually had not seen the Winnie the Pooh horror movie trailer, so I just looked up the still shot and. But see, you're laughing now. What I'm about to say next is really about to have you busting up laughing, unless I just fumble the joke. But this is where we're gonna need a Patreon for G13 classified segments. But this reminds me of that one meme of
Nah,
the bear.
chill. Hey, chill. We don't have to bring the snuggle bear into this. We don't.
That's G13 classified. We gonna have to have a Patreon level subscription if y'all
Yeah, you're
trying to.
gonna have to pay for what the snuggle bear means. You're gonna have to pay. You that's the definition of if you know, you
You
know.
know, because man, the people that know, they're busted up laughing right now. Because that's the funniest meme of UCSD's existence. Is all I would
Bar
say.
none. Bar none. It's not even close. To this day, you could probably show that little meme and people would at least like chuckle, like at least. Like I remember that. Like at least. And that was from a while back. Like
I just looked it up just to see, and it's we got to get to the podcast.
yeah, man. But we started this off talking about like fighting a bear on land or tuna in water. And it kind of comes back to like, we was wanting to talk about vulnerability. And that's kind of what that question kind of comes down to. Like, where are you most vulnerable in them two situations? Like, you pretty down bad in both, honestly. But what does vulnerability mean in nature? You know what I'm saying? Like, what does that actually mean, like outside of just the context of just kind of interpersonally or just in like communal spaces and stuff. And so this is the definition that I found. So the concept of vulnerability encompasses a variety of definitions. In general, vulnerability means the potential to be harmed. Vulnerability to natural hazards is thus the potential to be harmed by natural hazards. So, like, what does that mean to you? Like, how does, now that you read that definition, how does that like relate to the question?
I think that potential to be harmed, I think that's the real key, because when I think about like vulnerability in nature, it's like you're just exposed to just chance, like whatever the probability of X happening, like you're just succumb to that, like you're just open to whatever happens. Um, and natural hazards, like that's just like you think of the animal kingdom and where animals are vulnerable at different times of day, different environments. We think about us, like where we're vulnerable. Also, just thought, especially just looking at the phrase potential to be harmed, I also thought about like something we're going to talk a little earlier, later, but emotionally vulnerable, like to be emotionally prone to be harmed or like potentially harmed. Like I had to sit on that one for a little bit, because that's really what I feel like
Mhm.
being vulnerable truly feels like. It's like I'm putting myself out there at the risk of potentially being harmed. There is another potential for things to go well, but that feeling of vulnerability comes from like, yo, I don't know what's going to happen next. This could go all the way south. And even the unknown of it not going south of what else could happen, that could be pretty frightening as well. So that's what immediately came to mind. What about yourself? What did that mean for you, kind of crafting that and looking into that?
Yeah, so like the thing that I kind of took away from it was the natural hazards part. Like, what are natural hazards and what does that like encompass? You know what I'm saying? So like when I first thought of it, I was like, because like a lot of people don't know, like I've lived through multiple hurricanes, tropical storms, ice storms, what
Nope.
else what else is there? Shit, I've been through a couple of earthquakes, and it's not like, and I know, like, yeah, we in California, all earthquakes, so but me, a person where the earth didn't move where I was from, I was tripping. I ain't never felt more vulnerable in my life than when the earth started moving. What what do you even do? Because yes, I've been in hurricanes, but you kind of knew it was coming a little bit. Like, they got good with the weather forecast,
No, no. This is the one thing I'll forever disagree with you on. I don't care. Give me an earthquake any day. Like if especially if I know I would survive a hurricane or earthquake, I'm picking the earthquake. Like
it's
I'm not dealing with her. I've been in a tropical storm. That was bad enough. I'm not dealing with no hurricane, no tornado. Nah, I'm cool.
Man, but like for me, I think it's just because I didn't experience it until I was like 15, 16. So like my whole life the earth just didn't move. So I was I was cool off that. But I think the natural hazards, like when it does come to interpersonal and stuff, it's like, what am I expecting of other people? Right? Like, what is natural about other people's tendencies? And where do we fall into that? Because sometimes I've taken a step back and I've looked at like, okay, when was I vulnerable, and then there was a natural hazard interpersonally with somebody where it didn't go well when I was vulnerable. And then I'm like, okay, what's the difference from that and a hurricane coming? Am I gonna blame the people around me because the hurricane came? I mean, the hurricane was gonna come, you know what I'm saying? Or
Yeah.
like the heat wave was gonna come. But I think it just made me take a step back and look at like, how am I responding to the natural hazard that might come up with that vulnerability?
Yeah, that's really real. I think when it comes to, it also makes me think of like intent versus impact. Like, what's the intent of the situation versus what was the impact of it? And interpersonal natural hazards is really interesting. I think, especially when you take into context, well, context and environment, like what natural hazards exist from person to person. What is your history with this person? What environment are y'all in? When is this vulnerability happening? Like, what else is going on? There's just so many different things that play a role into it. And yeah, it takes a lot of courage too. I think courage is the only word, the other word that comes up when I think about vulnerability, because vulnerability can be active or passive. Like, you can find yourself being in a situation where you're vulnerable just by nature of what has happened, but there's also
Right.
that active quality of like, I'm going to put myself out there, I'm going to be vulnerable in this way. So sometimes I can take a lot of courage, overcoming a lot of fears. Because I can definitely think back on times where I was at my most vulnerable, and it took like, all right, I'm going to be vulnerable right now. I'm going to embrace all this fear, all this potential to be harmed, all these natural hazards, and just see what happens. Sometimes it's cool. Sometimes it's like, I ain't doing that again.
Yeah, and then the part to that too, like you were saying, is just like that courage part because whether you're fighting a bear or a tuna in water, like you gotta have courage to make a decision.
Yeah.
Cause yeah, you can scream when the bear starts attacking you and get mauled and the tuna might, tune you up. But you gotta have the courage either way to make a decision. You know what I'm saying? Like, because those small decisions are what, prolong what is, you know what I'm saying? Because sometimes like, either way, what it's gonna be is what it's gonna be. You know what I'm saying? And then we just gotta like move in and transfer from there. But that's like kind of what's getting into like what is what is innate about vulnerability? Like, what are those innate parts to it that like are gonna be there regardless? And I heard you talk about fear. That was one of the major parts to it. You want to talk like a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Because it goes into like fear, it goes into uncertainty, like fear of the unknown, fear of what's going to happen. Um, and it of course depends on the scale or the gravity of how vulnerable of a situation slash how important is it going to be. Like, it could be as little as like, oh, I'm about to go on this stage and share something deep and personal about me. Like, that's vulnerable, putting yourself out there. It could be asking one of those risky questions. um Back in the day, like drafting a text message to your crush, sending it real quick, and then kind of just tossing your phone to the side until the response come. Like, you put yourself out there with how you feel, and there's that fear of like, okay, what's going to happen? What are they going to say? What's going to come of this? And that, I feel, comes from a place of not being able to control what happens from there, because that all goes into vulnerability. Like, natural hazards, the potential to be harmed. You're just out there with someone else or some other forces at control of what's going to happen after you are in that vulnerable state. You don't have control over what happens to you, only how you react to it. And so I think it comes into a deeper discussion of what are you sincerely afraid of when it comes to being vulnerable? Like, are you afraid of what people are going to think, people are going to say? Are you fearful of specific harm, physical harm, mental harm? Thinking about what that fear encompasses can really impact like how you move forward in those vulnerable moments.
Yeah, because like again, like making those choices, because like when we have those moments and we can reflect, like I feel like the moments when I was looking back and like vulnerability went well, right? And then I kind of started doing this perspective of like, okay, there's 365 days in a year, right? Like, how many of those days was bad, right? Really, if I was to count them all. And rarely does it ever get past half. I can't say that I ever have even gotten to however much is half, like what wait, one 170, what is it, 180,
Uh,
180 days.
182.5,
Oh,
183,
okay.
depending on the year.
So I've never gotten at any point in my life and had 183 bad days at no point. And so even when I was at rough patches or something like that, that was a rough patch. Like even if it was a rough months or a couple months or 3 months, you know what I'm saying? So I think when it comes to that innate part of it, it's like recognizing that it's a it's not gonna go anywhere, and avoiding it doesn't lead to more security. Like as much as I might want to not put myself in a vulnerable situation, that's the only way I'ma eat. You know what I'm saying? Or I'm a like when I looking at the perspective of a lion, right? To take down a buffalo or a hippo, you gotta be slightly insane to do that. Like you gotta be slightly insane to even be thinking you about to do that. And then, I know they show those videos and it looks like the lion is the aggressor and oh wow, they're attacking that animal. But really their only weapons are their claws and their teeth. These wildebeests and zebra and stuff, they got these kicks, they got these horns, they got all this stuff as weapons. And shoot, never mind the fact if the lion fall and break its leg or fracture something or whatever might happen, but they got to do that if they want to eat. And so when I look at those times in my life when I was applying for a job I didn't know I was going to get, or I was going through the interview process, I had to be vulnerable with them and be like, yo, like shit, I need this bread. So I gotta put myself out there in this interview, even if it's in a professional sense, to even show them that I'm worth this position or worth this job. You know what I'm saying? So I think those are those things that I think at a grounding level really help to establish like not just that, you know, one to one social media surface level definition of vulnerability, in that it's almost like a layer of like like kind of just exposing scars or traumas and stuff like that. But I think like it helps to just show that everybody's gonna have to do it. Like everybody and every living thing does. Like even a polar bear, it has to be vulnerable to try to get a seal or something. They got to go in ice cold, like frigid, like frigid
Oof.
waters, and trust that its blubber and its fur is gonna keep it warm. So I think that kind of helps to keep things a lot more, grounding. Like I'm special, but I'm not that special in that I'm not gonna have to be vulnerable.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Animal metaphors and all. Um, and it's just thinking about like the polar bear going to the ice cold water, trusting like its blubber, trusting what nature has given it to survive. I also think about starting like college, starting a new job, starting in a new town, like moving somewhere, there's a lot of vulnerability that goes into that. And you're just trusting life experiences at that point. Like there's no blubber that's going to help you make friends.
Nah, and I like, like, shoot, I switched schools 16, 17 times before I even got to college. And like every time I tell somebody that, they just like, what were you doing? Like, but like the thing that I had learned real young, because I it started in elementary school, was like, I'm cool. Like, I'm a cool person. I have confidence in myself.
Eh,
I
no, I'm just kidding.
Nah, I'm cool. I'm cool than the other side of the pillow. And and everybody's not gonna be for me. But my job isn't to be for everybody, it's to find my tribe. And so every time I went to a new place, new state, new place, like I was always the new kid. And so finding my tribe was about finding folks that, related to me. And so I had to be a little vulnerable. I had to be like, yo, can I sit with y'all at lunch? You know what I'm saying? I had to be like, like if it's a conversation, I had to speak up a little bit and give my opinion on it, even though I don't know these people and don't know if they'll pick at me for my thoughts or what. I had to say something because that's the only way they're gonna get some buy-in to see who I am. You know what I'm saying? And then, going to high school, especially because I feel like high school and middle school is a lot more difficult, especially high
Mhm.
school, because high school is like, you know, it's kind of like it's kind of like a little more set in stone of where people is at. They known these people since kindergarten or whatnot. And you literally knew, like, you don't got nothing to do with them. So there's like less investment.
Yeah.
And so it had to be more about like, okay, I'm cool, they're cool, and I have to try and put effort if I want to have the connections. Because if I didn't want to have the connections and I didn't want to connect to people, then there would have been nothing to gain from that. I would have just been standing around, still being vulnerable, still feeling vulnerable, because I wouldn't have a tribe. Because that's what that tribe helps to, you know, then I can go on and try out for the basketball team. Then I can go on and, try to get involved with after school activities, because there's a landing point for the vulnerability to be. And so I think that goes into like the next point, just like, how do we foster vulnerability so it's a safe space to land on, and just from us, like, I love your insight on it, because like I feel like just as Black men and in a patriarchal society, like, a lot of the onus is from men of why we aren't vulnerable. You know what I'm saying, in terms of that. But I think you definitely have a perspective of it is that needs to be the forefront. You know what I'm saying, of what we're on as men and as people. But just wanted to get your insights on that.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind with fostering vulnerability, it comes back to listening first for me, because I think that when you really take the time to listen to your surroundings, listen to the people you're around, and figure out like what those spaces need that you're in and what is your relationship to that space. Because I think when it comes to building new friendships, building new relationships, there's a lot of listening involved, especially in the earlier phases, because yeah, and I think I'm anchoring this a lot into like college friendships where you're at some level of maturity and know a little bit more about who you are. Um, People are telling you about themselves, but behind what they're saying, they're also saying a whole lot more. Like you saying that you've moved to X amount of states says a lot more than like, oh yeah, I lived in Florida, Texas, California. It's like, oh nah, like my family had to move. I had to make these friendships. Like you're learning a lot more about people by hearing more about what's underneath what they're saying. And I think that the more that you are able to pay attention to when people are being vulnerable with you, that helps you to figure out who you're also able to be vulnerable with. And on top of listening, of course, you have to share, you have to put yourself out. I think one of the more powerful community guidelines that I learned at UCSD was like make space, take space, like for those who continue to talk about themselves or share into a space, like stepping back or taking a space back to make sure that other folks have an opportunity to share. Because the more that you give yourself an opportunity for people to know more about you, the more that you're learning more about the people around you, the easier it is to be vulnerable with those people. Because within our college years, like I think within 2 years, I knew who I could be vulnerable with on campus. I knew who I could come to really talk about like a rough day versus who I'm going to just talk to be like, oh yeah, like where y'all watching the game at? Because it's those people that have gone a lot further than like, oh yeah, my favorite color blue. I'm
Right.
from so and so. Like really getting to know people for me is the first space to foster vulnerability where you know that you're going to be heard, you know that there's going to be sensitivity. And I think the other part to that is time and place. Like people that only try to get to know you like through text message or in passing in a hallway versus nah, it's Thursday night at 10 o'clock p.m. We all in this room. Like, what's really on y'all mind? Like, I want to spend this next hour and a half just talking to you, just getting to know you versus having to have like something to do. So that's what comes to mind initially for me, at least.
Yeah, man, I definitely resonate with what you're saying because, like, that piece that you said about, time and place, I think that definitely is a key part because I think sometimes folks, like, across all spectrums, like, almost feel, at least I see it as like a form of entitlement of just like, well, I'm going through a hard time and so everybody around me needs to just be ready to hear what I got going on. When in reality, like, everybody might not be ready for that right now. It might not be in that space, or they might not have even consented to even having that type of conversation. And so the next part of what that time and place too, what you said was like, the people that you hit up to, like who watching the game versus like I had a tough day, you know what I'm saying? That's still vulnerable. Like even if it's surface level or iceberg, you know what I'm saying? That's the visible iceberg is go seeing the game because that leads to what's below the surface. You can't start to get a deeper connection if you ain't even started at the top of the iceberg. Like if you gonna start it, you gotta be at that top part of just like, okay, maybe this is my entryway. Cause that's happened with me, like with us. So like we met because you put on Facebook who need they ass beat in 2K. And that was a real iceberg, tip of the iceberg type of surface level thing because playing 2K against somebody is whatever. Like I played 2K against people I couldn't stand. So it ain't really like that deep, but then it led to a low like each time we played it's a little more like how your class is going. Oh for sure, where you from? Oh okay, like you got brothers and sisters. Oh, okay. And like, but it's happening under, that, 2K thing. So I think like those are the ways that when we're talking about fostering it, it has to start from a layer of connection and a layer of like actually doing something. You know what I'm saying? And not having it be with expectation. Because you can have expectation once those things are spoken about and communicated. But I think it's just really dangerous to constantly expect things of other people if they're not communicated to them. And then if it's like if you don't feel comfortable communicating your expectations to somebody, why are you comfortable being vulnerable? Like, because
Man.
then what are you gonna expect? Like, you gotta kind of have one without the other. Because hell, I know that bear is not. I'm not expecting that bear to not just maul me, right? But I think sometimes there's this layer of expectation that's uncommunicated, and then people have a disdain for being vulnerable. Look what happened when I was vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, now you expected them to have a better response from what? Like, what did they show? You know what I'm saying? And what did you talk about with them? Because the times that I've communicated my expectations to somebody about how I want to be vulnerable, I will say 9.9 times out of 10, they pretty much held accordingly from there once they knew what the expectation was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really real. And it's funny that you brought up well, one, I think that the conversation on expectations that could go on for an hour. But you brought up us meeting and how we met. I was gonna bring up that too, because on top of like how those games of 2K led to us getting closer, I think there's also just, at least from my perspective, there was vulnerability and even putting that Facebook status out there
to the whole class, the whole Facebook group of everyone that was admitted that fall. It wasn't just some small Facebook group. It was to everyone. And
there was at
then
least 5,000 people
it
in
was
that group.
5,000 people in there. And I'm the comment. But yeah, keep going.
But like, it's a problem that you was the only comment. Like, I think that's when I realized just how black I was in college. I was like, oh, it's bound to be like 50 people that's trying to run 2K real quick. Waited like an hour. I'm like, ugh. Like, I think it was even like your roommate. I was like, oh, like I'm telling my roommate about this, and then you commented or something like that. And it's like, dang, out of all 30,000 undergrads at this institution, it's just this Andre Thompson person that wants to play 2K. I bet. And then you walked over to Marshall College, vulnerability there because you don't know me. You just walking across this random college campus to play 2K. And then
And
it's
your
like,
roommates was a wild bunch for me to be walking up into that door.
we for sure ain't going there right now. But then like even the initial conversation was like, oh, I'm Andre, I'm Kyler. Where are you from? I'm from Shelby, North Carolina. And in my head, I'm like, damn, that's the exact opposite of where I'm from. I'm from Los Angeles, California. We are not the same. I have no idea if I'm going to talk to you after this day because we have absolutely nothing in common. You is country as hell. I'm a city boy to the fullest. And them 2K games happen. Like, we can talk about 2K games on this podcast. We cannot talk about the 2K game on this podcast, but them 2K games happen. And from there, it just grew into just different moments of vulnerability. It was like inherently what we didn't know what we were saying was like, yo, like it's lonely out here.
we was on campus and noticed like it was it was a it was a little desolate when it came to just culturally feeling like I belong because when you're at a PWI or I don't know the acronym now because it's not technically that situation, but when you're at a PWI in essence and in founding, that culture seeps through even how they do the welcome week or how they do the intro to the campus or the orientation. All of it is all entrenched in. So when ain't nobody doing no Soul Train line and there ain't no like grill with ain't no links on the grill. We got this beautiful weather. There's no grills just going.
And we got hella grills on campus.
Grills.
Don't nobody be barbecuing.
And I think from there it was like, we was in isolated parts of it, like, because it was a big place. And so it's like, man, like if I have to kick it with just who's in my specific dorm or whoa, it's looking skimp out here.
And that's exactly what it came down to, because after that initial game I don't even think we talked for like a month, but it just came one point I'm like, dang, like I ain't even seen another black person since I played 2K with Andre. And it's like, you know what? Let me just, where is Argo Hall at? Like, let me just pull up because I have no idea what I'm gonna do otherwise. And that's kind of where I will say I will kind of start to conclude the vulnerability talk on my end. A lot of it's showing up to like overcoming vulnerability, being vulnerable, because it's like, yo, I don't know if y'all gonna like being friends. I don't know if we gonna be friends. I don't know if we gonna like each other, but we all agree that we all black. It ain't a lot of us. And special shout out to all the people in Matthews D apartment, because it's like y'all have been through this for a year, 2 years, and they're like, yep, we get it. Just come through, kick it. Let's watch some black stuff. Let's make some black food. and be vulnerable with each other. Like it's times where I ain't gonna say the name on the podcast, but I walked into people had like the hair going, like putting weave in, putting braids in, and y'all just met me. Like on some real shit. At this point in y'all's life, I'm literally just some nigga. To everyone in this room, I'm just some
Exactly.
nigga.
Exactly.
And we
And
just have a level of trust that we can like. This is a safe space, and if you weird, we about to call it out, and you ain't gonna be in a space no more.
yeah, and like I think that's where I wanted to touch on with the fostering vulnerability, because you kind of talked about the interpersonal lens, and I wanted to talk about like the communal lens, like of what I mean by like that tribe. And I think tribe building is a big part of vulnerability, because we've seen it even in cartoons, like where there's the bully and then they're bullying somebody or something, but they always got those two weird people that's just next to them in the picture, like from Lilo and Stitch um to Jimmy Neutron, to Fairly Odd Parents. No matter what it is, how they set it up, it's always like a little bit of tribe, like that tribe part. And I think, one of the biggest failures of, well, I won't say failures, I'll say one of the ways that capitalism and white supremacy work so well is because it divides us and makes it to where being tribal is very difficult. It makes it very challenging to be tribal because everybody's like at their individual apartment, at their individual apartment building, at their house in their individual neighborhood. And it's like, it's very difficult to coincide with everybody and like, all live in the same place. And I knew that's why when I lived on campus, I treasured every year. I had a great time because I knew that was gonna be the only time in my life that I could, yeah, it might be a 20-minute walk, but I knew that I had access to a tribe within very quick, like I could just go, you know what I'm saying? I don't have to think about it. I don't gotta get no gas. I don't gotta, go get in a car and drive no, like I can literally just walk over to them. Like they said they going through a hard time. It allows me to show up different when we actually is in common space and in, common areas, versus now, like shoot, some of my, like a lot of my homies is around the world. Like
For
from
real.
the from a couple years, people was in China, people was in New Zealand, people was in DC, people in New York, people in Texas, people in all over the place, when we used to be all in, a square mile of each other. And I
At
think
most.
at most, and it's easier to plan, a Sunday breakfast when everybody's within a square mile, and hey, you bring the eggs, all right, you bring the bacon, you bring the orange juice, and then everybody coming together, but we eating good. You know what I'm saying? And it's easier at that point to build up that courage, because sometimes it's like, you know, like Courage the Cowardly Dog. I always think about that. Like Courage was able to be courageous because Muriel was showing mad love to Courage every before the episode started. Like like that's literally probably the first 15 seconds of the episode, right?
Mhm.
But Courage is on her lap, like he chilling. They vibing, and you could tell that Muriel cares about Courage. And so whenever these wild, like a shoot, stuff that happened in Courage, I don't even sometimes know how to explain. But if there's an alien invasion, or when the Flan dude came that was hypnotizing people, he went into high gear because he had so much built up love and admiration for his tribe that he was willing to do anything to protect them, because he was abandoned as a pup. You know what I'm saying? And so I think about that a lot, like abandonment, and how that can truly impact how much somebody can be vulnerable, because people just like, because we working with students a lot of times, I be trying to tell, higher leadership and stuff, like, yeah, we can ask them to be vulnerable, but what are we doing to actually build that up communally? Like, are we just asking them to be vulnerable for our benefit, or is it going to be actually for their benefit? Because a lot of times it ain't really benefiting folks to be vulnerable in those contexts. Like it might be better to, find another way. And so I think along with that interpersonal aspect that you talking about when it comes to like one on one with a person that you want to, get closer to, definitely having those thoughts around how can you build a tribe out? Like what would your tribe need to look like? Because some people haven't even given thought to that. It's just like I got my friends, but in my experience, especially moving 16, 17 times,
Mhm.
friends aren't the same as a tribe. Because friends are friends no matter where they're at, but tribes are the people that you are literally in physical closeness to. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, you can do the whole like, oh, we're still a tribe and we're far away, but it's just incredibly much more difficult to do those day to day. I just need a hug, or you know, I just want to drop off some food because you said you was hungry. Like we're not able to do those things when there's so much distance. And especially me being so far from my family, like I had to find a way to create those tribes and that tribalism within, my groups of people that I knew. And that was my way of surviving, you know what I'm saying, and thriving. Not just surviving, but thriving, you know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, man.
That's really real. And leaving the listeners with some homework. Think about what y'all tribe look like. Like, what's your tribe in your personal life right now and work life? Like, what tribes do you have? Where's your tribe really succeeding? Where's your tribe falling short? Who you need to draft in an upcoming draft? Like, who you need to add to the tribe? Who ain't really been pulling in their weight, and you might have to waive some people from the tribe. Like, that's y'all homework. Just really think about who's in your tribe, who's serving your tribe, and as well as who's like taking away from your tribe without putting back.
Yeah, and I think the bonus homework is, have you communicated with your tribe these expectations? Like have we had a group discussion of what we want from the tribe?
That's
Because that
real.
might be a place to start. Because people in the tribe might not even know they was in the tribe. You know what I'm saying? So it's all about discovery. It's all about discovery and learning. Because it develops over time.
Yeah, that is very true.
Yeah. But in closing, we here. We at the end. It's another great pod. Kyler, you really. I feel like every time we talk, I feel like there's something that you have a gem for, but you really drop some gems. Um, the podcast is bi-weekly, y'all. Possibly might be weekly, but we still. I mean, depending on because sports is. I mean, I know baseball is a sport and all that, but I'm just saying, like, sports for what I watch is a 9 month season, and we're out of that 9 month season of basketball and football. So, like, might add another week, but we are bi-weekly. You know, check us out, listen to the old episodes. Keep up with us on IG, Nat Nonsense Pod. If you got any questions for us, or even if you have some comments or anything you want to connect with us on, or ideas you want us to talk more about, hit us up on that Instagram. That's where you can find us.
Yeah, so follow at Nat Nonsense Pod. We'll see you over there and let us know your thoughts.